Hallelujah! For once, there is actually some good news regarding the pandemic that is starting to seep into mainstream media. And it doesn't come as a surprise as well. If you haven't been looking into the news this past week, many sites are publishing articles about a recent study that a majority of the population might already be partially immune to the SARS-CoV-2 virus, in part because of the coronaviruses that cause the common cold. I've alluded somewhat to the strong possibility throughout this series, throughout the COVID-19 Chronicles, that SARS-CoV-2 is going to peter out and be nothing more than the seasonal common cold in the years to come. But I've never really talked about it in great detail until this video. So just over a month ago, well before all these new studies regarding COVID-19 and the common cold coronaviruses began surfacing, I texted my friend this article called An Uncommon Cold, which I put in the link on my previous video, and I'm going to do the same thing with this one, as well as the many different articles about this new study regarding the common cold coronaviruses. But in short, this article that I just mentioned, An Uncommon Cold, it talks about how it could very well be possible that an infection with a prior coronavirus may give someone protection from SARS-CoV-2. And the article also talks about a very forgotten major pandemic, much more obscure than the Hong Kong flu of 1968, called the Russian flu. Now, that article was published back in May, which in pandemic time is quite a long time ago. And I basically texted my friend saying, hey, I found this article that hypothesizes that this may not be the first time a coronavirus has infected the world, and that infection just became another seasonal cold without a vaccine, and I think that's what COVID-19 is going to do as well. So you can imagine how intrigued I was. This was presenting information that widely contrasts with what has been given to us through the mainstream media and all that fear-mongering that's going on. This was an article that, even though all of it is just one big hypothesis, it was something that I wanted my friends to share because the public needs to know about this to quell some of their anxieties, and also because at some point it's going to catch the attention of virologists. Well, it took a while, but here we are. And like I said, this news did not come as a surprise to me. So what exactly is this common cold study that has been the talk of the last week? Well, basically a team of virologists from the Lajala Institute for Immunology have found evidence that the immune system can recognize SARS-CoV-2 and fight it off without causing many symptoms, depending on how frequently one got exposed to the common cold coronaviruses. So let me remind you folks what the 4 common cold coronaviruses are. They are OC43, 229E, NL63, and HKU1. Each of these viruses infect millions of people each year, and that's not even counting the 100 plus rhinoviruses that also cause the same thing. So yes, basically our immune system produces what's called T cells, and the new study claims that the T cells produced after having, let's say, an OC43 common cold infection can actually react to the novel coronavirus without even seeing the virus before. This was confirmed by blood samples that were taken years before SARS-CoV-2 even existed. This proves the mystery that some people were asymptomatic while others didn't. This proves why densely populated areas such as India and Brazil, cities in those places, don't have people lying dead in the streets in the tens of thousands like a war zone. Most of us had immunity that we didn't know was going to be useful, and we can thank our common cold, possibly thank our common cold for that. This news is huge, even though, yes, more studying needs to be done. This discovery not only has implications on how the fall and winter months are going to be like, but also preparing for future coronavirus outbreaks. This is the kind of news that should reassure people that all this craziness will end sooner than later, and to be one step ahead of mainstream media. This also validates the infection rate being at least 10 times higher than normal based on antibody testing, which in turn means that SARS-CoV-2 has always behaved like its less evil cousins with its ability to transmit easily. It's only because it's a novel strain that for now it's causing strong symptoms in a lot of people. After seeing all these articles about this study, there are some things that I feel like could and should be researched more. Build upon what you have. This new study is just the foundation. So the first one, as I alluded to earlier, the first one is researching and taking a deeper look in the 1889 Russian flu pandemic. This is a pandemic that has obviously flown under the radar for the longest time, but I think it's time for scientists to really research this. I think it's time for this to bring this pandemic to attention. I've already mentioned this in my last video about the Russian flu, but today I'm going to elaborate more on that pandemic. So the Russian flu pandemic peaked in 1890 and was pretty bad, persisted until around 1892. It killed approximately 1 million people around the globe. But keep in mind, the world population was roughly 1.5 billion compared to 7.8 billion today. And of course, medicine and technology were not as sophisticated as they are today. So, to have 1 million people succumb to the illness between 1889 and 1892 would be equivalent to 5.6 million people dying from COVID-19. Currently, as of filming this, which is August 15th, there are 767,054 fatalities. About 4.8 million more people would need to die from SARS-CoV-2 before it equals the death rate of the Russian flu. For many years, an influenza strain was thought to be the culprit, but no solid evidence can prove that. Then, a Belgian group in 2005 traced the origins of the OC43 virus and found that it made its jump into humans from cows around 1890. This means that the Russian flu may not have been flu, but coronavirus. And one of the symptoms that stands out with the Russian pandemic was that those who were infected experienced central nervous system issues almost like this coronavirus. And as you know today, OC43 now circulates as the common cold with symptoms that are just merely a nuisance. Now, coronaviruses have been known since the 1960s, but they have always been out of the spotlight until the first SARS epidemic in 2003. So there are still a lot of missing puzzle pieces regarding coronaviruses in general, and it could very well be that we may have mislabeled the Russian flu as a flu pandemic. We'll never really know for sure. Maybe the flu and coronavirus were working in tandem those 3 years. And this leads to the second subject that I think needs to be researched: tracing the origins of the 4 common cold coronaviruses. So we know now a little bit about OC43, but what about HKU1, 229E, and NL63? They were already discovered as common colds, but could they have been circulating for years and possibly centuries before that? It's plausible. If OC43 was the culprit responsible for the Russian flu, then HKU1, 229E, and NL63 might have gotten their start by causing deadly SARS-like pandemics that, in our history, were labeled as influenza pandemics. By looking into the past, a treasure trove of knowledge about the nature of coronaviruses could be unearthed. Think about that. They had to have gotten the viruses, had to have gotten their start somewhere, and this is something that could be big enough to rewrite medical history and prove that yes, this is not the first time humans have had to deal with deadly coronaviruses. It's that this is the first time in modern history, in this era of the internet and 24/7 news, that we've experienced such an event. And there are procedures that were being done, that have been done today, that were never used in the past before. So the moral of the message in today's video is this. There is nothing, there's very little to panic over. Never worry until it's really the time to worry. We should not deny that this is a new strain of the virus. We shouldn't deny that this virus is destructive mainly to the elderly and those with compromised immune systems. But otherwise, no one is dropping dead left and right like the Black Plague. Over 50% of all cumulative confirmed cases have recovered, and the number of deaths is currently nowhere near that of the 1889 Russian flu pandemic percentage-wise. It's already proven that the infection rate is much higher than that previously thought, and is now backed up by the study regarding the common cold coronavirus infections to COVID-19 immunity. Now, at the same time, I am not trying to imply that you do a complete 180 and carry on as if the pandemic never existed. Although young people like me are more than capable of managing COVID-19 symptoms, if you want to protect people who you love, like your parents and your close friends, you would do everything you can to still err on the side of caution. What I'm saying is just merely to snap you folks out of it if you were someone who got themselves suckered into the black hole of exaggerated mistruths. Trust the doctors, trust the scientists, trust technology and our progression of technology within the last, 20, 30, 40 plus years, especially medical technology. Overall, we've made great strides in the medical field. We have technologies that people back in 1890 would be very jealous of. We now know what the true nature of this virus is, and that this vaccine will suppress the pandemic much quicker to where we can quickly get back to living our daily lives uninterrupted. But we have to also accept that the virus is here to stay with us. Just like the flu, it's not going to go away. The biggest difference is that the flu will continue to be more serious year after year. The strain of influenza changes every year, warranting a vaccine each year, whereas coronaviruses, based on the fact that we have 4 common cold ones circulating year after year, are deadly for a year or two when first introduced to humans, and naturally weaken as more infected humans build immunity and essentially put pressure on the virus to naturally evolve into something less deadly. Think carefully about this. Imagine that we never had a vaccine for influenza. Yeah, this puts the nature of the coronavirus to shame. So be thankful that we have a vaccine for the flu, okay? But in the end game that I'm hoping for is that this strain will join its other distant cousins and circulate as common cold coronavirus number 5. And instead of the name SARS-CoV-2, it'll be something like HCOV, HCoV, human coronavirus, and it'll get some 4 character title, like HCoV WX19. So, my final question is this. Are you going to bow down to the fear and hunker down for 8 more months? Or are you going to believe that this will go from pandemic to common cold?